All right, just letting some other people in. Welcome, welcome. My apologies for the lack of invite today. You guys who are here, you win the prize. Thank you for remembering and scheduling this. So I want to start out with the homework from last week, which was to feel love and or gratitude for 5 minutes at a time throughout the week. Hopefully every day. If you weren't able to do that, that's okay too. But I would love to hear from one or two of you about how that went for you. If it was helpful, if you were able to do it, if you were not able to do it, what you felt instead. I really want to know what came up for you. Who would like to share? I know somebody has great insight. Yes, Sarah, go ahead and unmute yourself. Tell us.
I'm going to try to be short because I talked last week, but I think you changed my life starting last Tuesday. But
Wait. Say that again.
oh, I just said I'll be quick because I talked a lot last week and I want to.
No, the next part.
Oh, I think you changed my life starting last Tuesday.
I think you changed your own life, but I love to hear it. Come on, tell us more, Sarah. Tell us more.
Okay, so there was 3 virtues I was already working on just thinking about. I wasn't embodying them yet, and they were humility and contentment and gratitude. And so then I added love based on what you had taught last week. But I started last Tuesday to like embody them, and how that had to work for me is I thought of inspirational images or like for love, my husband, and then I tried to feel what came after. Then I wrote down in my notes of my phone what the feelings were. So then in subsequent times, I could just read the physical description, kind of have that image there, but try to drop the image eventually and just do the feeling part. And what happened in my life was that I put the alarms for like few hours different through the day. So basically all day I was having these touch points of these high vibrations, whatever you call. And what was happening was that I would feel those things, and it was just literally for either 1 or 2. I never did 5 minutes, but just 1 or 2 minutes. I would come back into my wherever I was, because I would literally have to just go to the bathroom, shut the door, or go around a corner to do it. And I would come back into whatever stress was happening and like kids or whatever. And it was like from the week before or the day before, even last Tuesday, it was like what was happening was that every time I was embodying those frequencies, it was like I was in a hot air balloon and I was rising. So when my daughter would say the same thing about the same problem we've been having, it was like I could see where I used to operate from in this discussion with her. And I had altitude. So it was like rather than looking at that problem and then trying to put on glasses with the lens of love, I was living love and I could see her problem. And it actually was the difference between being on the ground and what you can see. And you can see a little ground and a ton of sky, but then if you go up, you see lots of sky and lots of land. So it was like I was able to operate completely differently in every like interaction. And it just, everything changed, like my nervous system, everything was like my average feelings were so much higher that whenever I dropped into an old pattern of like, oh, I'm so stressed to teach my daughter to drive. I was like, whoa, that feels so different from the practice I just had an hour ago with humility or whatever it was I was doing. And I just noticed this contrast was so stark to me that even if I played out my normal pattern, because I'm so used to doing that, I noticed it, which took me at least a level above it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but through the week, I was just able to raise my average, notice the contrast of how I normally was going to respond, and then do something slightly different. It wasn't like it was a perfect week, but just the awareness really changed a lot of things for me. So,
Thank you for sharing that. That's something that we haven't actually talked a lot about yet up to this point, which is one of the beautiful byproducts of this work is it does change your life once you get into the habit of doing this. And it does allow you to see your goals because this is a goal getters class, right? Sarah's talking about her day to day, which might be her big goal right now, right? Teaching her daughter to drive or whatever. But what happens is we start to see our goal different from a different vantage point. But the other thing Sarah brought up that we haven't talked much about yet is the contrast. So if we study some of the, like Joe Dispenza's work for sure, he talks about how, and other social scientists as well, how we get into habits. Our brain has these neural pathways. Our brain has programming. Our brain has paradigms. You can call it whatever you want, but we have habits that we get stuck in. Basically, it's thinking ruts. And so basically we get out of bed and we repeat the same thing over and over, even though we don't love it. And so what happens is when we interrupt those repeated patterns, those repeated emotional patterns, when we interrupt that, we start to notice the contrast. It's one of the most important things you can do to change who you are being is practice a different emotion on purpose, because the contrast is so stark. We're like, wait, this feels different. I'm noticing something different. So we can feel the higher vibration, to use your wording, right? That higher frequency. And when we fall back into old patterns, which we actually want to change, and we never noticed them before when we were in them, we then start to notice, wait, this feels different again. I'm falling back in. Like a lot of clients will say, like, what do you do when you want to change, but you just go so quickly back into old patterns, you don't even notice until it's too late? Insert practice feeling on purpose. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a beautiful byproduct of what we teach. That's what a lot of people would not consider that the goal, but it's such a beautiful step in the goal, right? And then let's go ahead and add the confidence in our ability to create emotion on purpose, right? Like if we could hand the whole world the ability to create love and joy and gratitude anytime they want, how much would people pay for that, you guys? If we're just like, here, you can have this anytime you want it. That's a valuable gift. We're just going to give it to ourselves for free, right? Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Sarah shared a beautiful example of how it worked for her. If it didn't work for you, I want you to share that too. I want to hear all the things. Does anybody else want to let me know how the homework went? I genuinely want to hear if you want to share. No? Oh, yes, Bonnie, please unmute. We want to hear from you.
Okay, so Sarah, you're at college level, and I'm going to just honor that, and I get to be right where I am. So I felt really successful just because when I left last week, for the first time, it was like, oh, love and gratitude. That's easy for me to feel, right? Like for all the time that I've been building my business or whatever, it's always like, oh, you've got to focus on this, and then you have to believe, and then you have to feel the feelings. And I was like, okay. And so I would try, to focus and I would be like, I just don't feel anything. But when you were like, no, all you have to do is feel love and gratitude, focus on that, and then allow that goal to kind of like visit, right, during the same time. And I found for me, it was really easy to do in the morning, like after I've been praying, because I'm already in that space. And so then it was just like, oh, okay. And I would just be like, that seems really easy. Like it's not hard, Now, kudos to you, Sarah, because the idea of like right in the middle of the day, I don't know. That's a skill I don't quite have yet. So it's just like on demand. I guess I could but I would have to stop and focus. I would have to like refocus in. Whereas just the idea that, oh, I've just felt that before and I'm just going to feel that right now. Maybe not so much at this point. But I thought it was really powerful. And for the first time, I thought, oh, I really can see how I'm going to get to my goals because this is not hard. Like this is not hard, right?
I love that. This is not hard. In fact, what happens the more you practice this, keep going with it, Bonnie. And I love that you're giving yourself permission to just be where you are. That's exactly what we want right now. But so what happens is when we start to realize this doesn't have to be super complicated and we can just feel really good inside. Not that we're going to feel good all the time. I don't want to give that false impression, but this practice itself does feel good. And for some of my clients, it almost becomes addictive to them, right? Like they're like, I just want to feel great all the time, which does motivate them to practice more and more and more. But there's also the work that we put into it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But thank you for sharing that. Like we don't have to work from the outside in. We don't have to work from a model on a piece of paper that says, this is my goal and I should feel motivated and I should feel excited. And if perhaps by chance I get too motivated or excited, then I'll probably take this action. And if I probably take that action, then there's a small chance that I might get this result, right? A lot of us operate that way. But when we start to operate from the inside, that's the sweet spot. We want to work from the inside out. And that's where we change and our goals become a whole different ballgame. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share their experience? I want to hear it if you want to share it. Okay. I'm going to dive into a little bit more today. I want you guys, as I'm talking today, to jot down some questions. You could even type it in the chat box. I probably won't see it until I stop screen sharing. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into the vibration, the frequency. Nikki brought that up last week. Like, okay, you're talking about this, but what about attraction? And what about bringing our goal to us? We're going to go deeper. Each week, we keep going and going. And that's what we're going to do right now. So some of you have heard this story before. It's a story about the rabbit effect, and you can read more about it in the book called The Rabbit Effect by Dr. Kelly Harding. Also, if you type in Psychiatric Times, Volume 36, Issue 12, you can read a little Reader's Digest version about this story. Even if you've heard about this study before, I want you to hear it through different ears today, okay? I want you to hear it through the lens of creating goals and creating different feelings in our bodies, and how the feelings we have in our body creates attraction and affects things outside of us. So basically what happened in 1978, I remember the exact year because that's the year I was born. In 1978, Dr. Robert Narum, I think is how you say his name, and some of his lab researchers decided to do a study on rabbits. And this study was to understand the relationship between having a high-fat diet and heart health. Now, we're doing this study on rabbits, but obviously we know that we're trying to figure out this correlation for the humans. And so they had all these control groups, and they had this very high-fat diet that all the control groups were fed. Nothing was different. And so they were really excited to get this research back because they had done enough investigation that they were pretty sure that it was going to show all these fatty buildups in the cells and arteries of these rabbits when they were fed this diet. So they get back the results, and what they found was a lot of the rabbits did not have the fatty buildup that they thought they would find. So they're digging. What is the difference? They thought somebody had done something to totally mess up the study. Their findings were so stark and they were so confused. They kept digging, like, what is the issue here? So finally, what they found was all the rabbits who did not have the buildup, did not have the artery buildup, were under the care of a particular rabbit caretaker. It was one lady who had all the rabbits. And so they talked to her. They interviewed her. Like, what did you do differently? Did you make a mistake somewhere? Did you feed them enough? Like, they're digging in. So finally, to make the long story shorter, finally what they discovered was this lady loved these rabbits, loved and cared for these rabbits. She would hold them. She would talk to them. She would nurture them. I want you to think about the homework from last week. Feeling love and gratitude in your body every single day. Sarah even mentioned how when she felt love and gratitude, it affected her relationship with her daughter. Like Bonnie was talking about how when she felt love and gratitude, it made life feel different. It made her situation feel easier. It made her goal feel easier. What the rabbit effect study actually found was when we have kindness, right, which is spurred, motivated by love and gratitude, it actually led to a healthier body. Probably the body that was giving the love and gratitude, but not just that. The love and gratitude from the caretaker's body was felt by the rabbits, who, by the way, didn't understand English, had no idea what she was saying to them, right? It was the energy of the love and gratitude that the rabbits within her care could feel. It literally changed their physiological chemical makeup. I want you guys to let that sink in. We are bolstered by love, by connection, by purpose. When we feel love and gratitude, it changes us, but it also changes the things around us. Now, lest you say, oh, I bet there was a mistake. This is hocus. This is too woo-woo. They went back and did the study again. Very, very carefully this time, being very, very certain not to mess up the study, not to alter anything. between control groups. And guess what happened the second time? With different rabbits. The love, care, and nurture from this caretaker once again changed the physiological makeup of the rabbits she held close to her, of the rabbits she loved, nurtured, and was grateful to have the opportunity to work with. Your physical body is made of energy. Your whole body is made of energy. We've talked about this all the way up until this point. When you feel love and gratitude, that energy affects how you feel, and it affects things around you. Likewise, when you feel anger, when you feel sadness, when you feel grief, which are part of the normal human experience. I'm not saying we shouldn't feel those things. We just want to create awareness that when we feel those things, it does alter our physiological makeup. It alters not just us, but the things around us. You've heard that saying, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? Does it have something to do with the vibrational pull that we create with our bodies, with the vibrational frequency? I didn't add any reference to this because it's still being studied, and I don't want you to go out and say this as fact. But as you know, I've mentioned him a couple of times. I follow the research of Joe Dispenza fairly carefully. And since COVID, since the pandemic has come out, they've been doing some research on this, right? Like, how does a person's mental state, how does their frequency, emotional vibration affect their health, in particular with COVID? And so what they did is they took the blood of a gentleman, and they've probably done this with several people since, but they took the blood of a gentleman, did some research, right? Like, what's going on in his body, and they introduced the COVID virus to his blood. And of course, the cells absorbed the COVID virus, all the things. It reacted as they thought it would. So they take this guy, they help him with his emotional frequency, help, like, basically give him some mental health help, right? They spend a week with him and they take his blood again. Very, very different effects of introducing the COVID virus to his body. And like I said, I don't want you to go out and tell people this as factual information. I'm not even presenting it to you as factual information. I'm presenting it as the possibility. Could this be true? There is scientific evidence that when you get angry, when you get frustrated and upset, that it actually lowers your immune system. You can Google that and you can find that out for yourself. But there is scientific evidence to suggest that lower vibration lowers your ability to fight off disease. So it would make sense that when we are introducing a specific virus to our body, based on how we feel inside, based on the rabbit effect, right? Our physiological makeup would be different. Okay. So if you guys have any thoughts or questions before we move on, go ahead and just raise your hand, or you could type into the chat box a question. And if not, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the vibrations in our body. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. Some of you have heard of universal laws. Some of you may not have, and that's okay. Basically, there are laws that we think about when we think about how the universe was made, when we think about how the universe works, the world as a whole. And we're just going to talk about a few of them today that correlate with the frequency, the vibration, what we're talking about when we say our energy affects the things around us, the people around us. Okay. So I want you to just go ahead and look at the screen. Excuse me. We're going to talk about the law of perpetual transmutation. We're going to talk about the law of relativity. And we're going to talk about the law of vibration and attraction. And some people will break this up into two. Today, for these purposes, we're just going to hold them together into one because they're very similar. Law of attraction builds off of law of vibration. So the law of perpetual transmutation basically talks about how our energy, just like we're talking about, moves into physical form within our bodies. And as we've learned today, can create a physical change in things outside of us. We talked about this last week. The images we hold in our minds will most often materialize in the results in our lives. Now, I really want you to think about that. Those of you who know this thought model of your thoughts create your feelings, create your actions, create your results, this is just a fancy universal way of saying when you can see something in your mind, that domino effect, that chain of events will take place and materialize into results. Okay. Energy transmutes as we work with it. So you have the same energy in your body. When Sarah was talking about in her example in the beginning, that she was like maybe frustrated with the fact that she's having to teach her daughter to drive and what that requires of her or whatever, right? That's the energy in a certain state. Then we change our attitude. We zoom out. We create that love and gratitude, however it works for you. And for each person, it could work a little bit differently. I don't want any of you to feel broken, defective if it doesn't work the same way for you. But we zoom out a little bit, we see it differently, and then we can have that love and gratitude in our hearts. It's the same energy. Transmuted means that we are moving the energy and it's vibrating at a different frequency. Law of transmutation is basically changing energy. Now, the law of relativity, I want you to think of 3 people. And we have a person who might be 4 feet tall and 100 pounds. And we have a person who might be 5 feet 6 inches and 150 pounds. And then we might have a person who is 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, right? Let's pretend for a moment that we're only looking at the person in the middle, the person who's 5 feet 6 inches and 150 pounds. Let's say that we don't know the other people exist. We wouldn't say that they're big. We wouldn't say that this person is small. They just are, right? If we put that middle person beside the 4-foot person, we might say, wow, the 4-foot person is small and the 5.5-foot person is large, right? And let's say then we push that smaller person out and we can only see the middle person and the 6-foot person. Then we might say the middle person is small and the 6-foot person is large, right? And we could go so on and different body sizes and different box sizes or whatever we want to talk about. But basically what this means is things just are. We give them meaning based on what we know, based on what we're used to seeing, right? If we take the poorest American person and put them in a third world country, we're going to see them very differently than we might see them when they're sitting on a street corner with all of their things, right? We are going to have a different thought about them based on the relativity of what's around them. So nothing is good, nothing is bad, big or small, until we relate it to something. We're going to practice relating ourselves and our situation to other things. Now, these notes are not my own, and it says practice relating it to something much worse. So ours always looks good. I don't think you always have to do that. I was in a pinch because I didn't get my other notes pulled up in time to add them to this slide. I don't even think we have to do that. I think just the awareness that we are viewing, judging, and feeling, this is the most important part, feeling a certain way about our circumstance because we are relating it to what we know. And then here's the last part that everybody talks about when they talk about the woo. And I put this last because it is important, but it's not the whole thing. Like, I want you to understand all 3 of these laws. Everything vibrates. Your body is just a collection of molecules vibrating. Hold up your hand. It's just a vibration, right? Your walls, your computer, the Wi-Fi that you're using, the cell phone that you have near you. It's all a vibration and we're connecting on different frequencies. Our conscious awareness of vibration is called feeling. A feeling is literally just a vibration in your body. Your thoughts control the way you vibrate. The paradigms which you learned, the conditioning which you learned about yourself might not be a conscious thought, right? It might be something that's deep inside of you, but it also controls the way you vibrate, which is where this work gets a little bit tricky for some people. They're like, I'm trying so hard and I'm believing so hard. Why isn't this working? Usually that's when we have to go in and figure out what's in your paradigm, like that old thinking, those things that you learned through repetition, those things that you learned when your subconscious was wide open as a child. or those things that you learn through highly emotional situations throughout your life that have kind of stuck with you. When you're not feeling good, like Sarah was saying, when she's like frustrated or whatever, we want to become aware of what we're thinking. And then we get to decide. Again, I don't love the way this one's worded. It says, when you become aware, then just think of something pleasant. As we know, that doesn't always work, or we do it all the time once we learn this, right? That doesn't always work for me. And I know this very, very well. But what is helpful is just knowing when we are feeling negative or when we're feeling positive, the love, the joy, the gratitude. We can take that awareness and we can be sure that it's because of something we're thinking, either on a conscious level or a subconscious level. I'm going to pause the screen share for a moment, and I want to know what your thoughts and questions are here, because this is important. I want you guys to really ask and feel into this. Yes. Who has a comment, question, clarification? If nobody does, I'm going to keep talking. Nikki's like, yes, please stop wasting our time, right? Shaking her head. Okay, I'm going to go back to the screen share, and I want to show you how a thought, a belief, a vision actually causes a physical reaction in your body. I've given you the studies. I've given you like the possibility that this is true. I've planted the seed on that idea. Now I want you to feel it in your own body. Okay. So I'm going to go back and we're going to do a little experiment to see if you can feel a change physically. I'm going to show you this picture of the lemon. I don't want you to do anything but study it. Like really look at the lemon. I want you to create this vision in your mind, right? Like you can see the little bumps and ripples on the skin. You can see the peel. If you've ever held a lemon in your hand, I want you to think about what it feels like to hold it in your palm. If you have ever cut a lemon, perhaps start thinking about that. I'm going to change the screen for a moment. Now I want you to study the inside of the lemon. Look at it in detail. Notice the core. On the surface of the cut part of the lemon, it almost looks to me like there's a seed right below the surface. I've cut lemons before, so I know what that's like. I notice when I cut the lemon, like part of the peel or the zest will start to spritz some of the smell and the citrus juices from the lemon. Now I want everybody on the call to close their eyes. After you've looked and really gotten a very good grasp of this lemon, I want everybody to close their eyes. And I want you to imagine you're holding this lemon in your palm. And I want you to, in your eyesight or your mind's eye, to imagine that the lemon has been cut in half. And so you're going to pull your palms apart and you have half lemon in each hand. And in your mind, I just want you to pull the lemon to your nose and start to smell it. Now I want you to open your mouth and bite into it. Feel the juice squirt in your mouth, under your tongue. Feel your cheeks. Feel the sensation in your body, in your mouth. Feel the physical change. Take note, before you open your eyes, take note of exactly what you're feeling in your mouth, in your body. Okay, come back to me. And I want somebody to raise your hand and tell me what your mouth and cheeks felt like. Who's willing to do that? Nikki, please.
So like the whole time I was imagining and stuff, like my mouth started to kind of water, but I'm thinking of the like how sour it is. And so there's like a feeling that comes up my jawline, like as I'm thinking about that sourness. And then when I'm biting into it, I could like imagine the softness, but there's definitely the feeling that comes up, like this visceral kind of like feeling like up my jawline here. And at the same time, there's saliva at the back. Like I can imagine that, and imagine on my tongue, like the sourness as well. So all of this is happening at the same time. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else have a different experience? I'm guessing that's pretty consistent. Yes, Bonnie, go ahead.
Well, I had the experience Nikki had, but before I would let that feeling be 100%, my brain was like, lemon juice is really bad for the enamel on your teeth. So it was like, it was a pushback. My whole body was like, oh my gosh, like this lemon, do not feel the lemon. Do not feel the lemon. This is dangerous. It was just kind of funny, I thought. And here we are. It's not real. But my brain was like, no, 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 no. Bad for the enamel, too strong.
Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing that. That is a perfect example. I want to speak to two things. So what Nikki was describing and what most of you felt, I'm guessing, is the perfect example of it doesn't have to be real. You literally can experience anything in your body on a visceral, physical level by creating it in your mind first. Anything. Then what Bonnie brought up, she's like, yeah, when I let myself go there, I felt the same thing. But what Bonnie brought up is conditioning. Like, how many times have you thought that lemon juice is bad for your teeth? Have you read articles? Did somebody else teach you that? Like, that was stored in your brain before we got here today, right? It's a beautiful example of what happens, right? When we're like, I'm going to create X amount of money in my job. I'm going to create X type of relationship in my marriage. I'm going to parent X type of way with my children. And then your brain will automatically, without you trying to, be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you do that, you're going to get run over. Your husband's not going to appreciate you and you're become a doormat. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you try to create that much money, you're going to fail publicly and people are going to laugh at you and that's going to be really embarrassing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. If you let your kids make their own decisions or whatever, it's going to ruin their life and then you're going to feel terrible and then the X, Y, or Z will happen, right? Your brain does that not because it's true, but because its only care is to keep you alive and safe and to keep those you love alive and safe, right? It has this conditioning and it throws it at you whenever it finds a place that it might possibly be relevant. We're on a goal setting call. We're on a goal achieving call. Has nothing to do with lemons, but we're talking about lemons. And Bonnie's already at the dentist getting like enamel painted on her teeth over here, right? That's what the brain does. You guys, I'm going to stop talking for 30 seconds. Let that sink in. If your brain does this on a call like this, of course it's going to do that when the stakes feel higher. Your brain is really, really good at keeping you safe and protecting you from predators. It's really good at protecting you from rabid dogs and like feral cats, but it's not very good at noticing what's an actual dog or what's an actual threat. Does that make sense? It's super good at protecting you, but it's not very good at knowing what it needs to protect you from. And oh, by the way, it's not super great at feeling anything that goes contrary to what it's always been taught. Okay, guys, I'm seeing your heads nodding. I'm seeing some eyes thinking. Please share what's coming up for you because I know it will be beneficial to the group if you share the way you're intaking this information, if you share the way it's making sense in your mind. Nobody has a thought? Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I totally track and follow everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting is as you're saying it, my brain is going, but I have proof.
Yeah.
So, and you know, there's actually a family member, loved lemons as a child, blah, blah, blah. And in her old age, like literally, like her teeth looked horrible. I mean, her teeth were pretty, but they weren't white. They could never get them even like, they were that, you know, because it had eaten the enamel off her teeth. So my brain is like, okay, Rhonda, that's really nice. But Rhonda doesn't understand that the truth is that this can happen. It's just kind of funny because I notice that there's truth on both sides, right? So it's like being able to tell my brain, thank you. I appreciate that, but we're not eating dozens of lemons. We've taken one bite.
Oh, this is fascinating, Bonnie. Thank you for sharing because you didn't even take a bite. Your brain's telling you right now, I need to argue with Rhonda about doing a false example that didn't expose my teeth to any acidic lemon juice at all. But it's putting up a fight with this example. Like, I'm not telling you to go eat a lemon. I'm not telling you you ever should bite a lemon, but your brain is fighting with me. Your brain is so good at keeping you safe, but it's not very good at knowing what it needs to keep you safe from. And this is case in point. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable with it. But my brain does it too. We're not picking on Bonnie. We love Bonnie. We're so grateful that she's saying what the rest of us are going to go through in our goal setting, in our businesses. I want to bring up the law of relativity here too, just to push Bonnie a little bit further. If I were to say, go eat lemons, and if the enamel on your teeth were to be damaged and your teeth were to be yellow, if everybody's teeth were yellow, if we were living in a remote village where nobody brushed their teeth and we all ate acidic foods to keep us alive, we would not have a thought about yellow teeth, right? We do because we see people on social media and on commercials with bright smiling teeth and Crest commercials where they actually add a little sparkle, and Instagram filters where everybody is perfectly flawless, and Zoom filters. I have one on today because I have a zit right here and right here, right? It's because that's what we are used to seeing. If we go to the village where people have no teeth at all, we admire the pretty teeth that are a little bit yellow. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're so grateful that we have the teeth, even if they're not perfectly white. They chew the food and nourish our bodies and allow us to eat the meat that we hunt for. I just want you to see it's all relative. But our brain is going to fight tooth and nail to prove to us it's right because it wants to keep us safe. Your lower brain hates to have its core views challenged. Mine does too, not just Bonnie's, not just everybody on the call. Mine too. Our brain hates it. That's why we have to recognize how the brain works. We have to recognize what's happening, because if we don't, we will always stay in this box. Remember the very first call, I want you to go way back. We put this box and we put an X on it. And we said, this is what you're used to thinking. This is what your parents taught you, your leaders taught you. This is what you taught yourself based on how you viewed yourself. And anytime we try to accomplish a big goal, if it doesn't line up with that, it will feel out of harmony. It's going to feel terrible in the body. We're going to be scared and doubtful and all the things, right? Bonnie just showed us beautifully what that looks like in a very small scale. But that will happen on a much larger scale when you reach for your goals. So yes, Sarah, go.
Can I share an example of transmutation that I felt this week?
Please, yes.
So I had a friend that before COVID, we had a certain type of friendship. And then through all the different issues that came out, it's been more distant in the last, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months. So before your call last week, I'm mature enough to be like, we grow, we change, like, it's okay. Kind of like really trying to be like handling this sadness I feel that we don't have this same like in step reciprocal friendship. And yet she's good and I'm good. We do good things. We're good people. And I admire her and everything. So whenever I was processing that before, I was just kind of thinking about sadness and not being afraid of it. And I was kind of doing that version of healthy processing of emotion, which is great. But whenever I had been practicing these just short little minute versions of reading my phone notes, like, okay, where was it in my body last time? Try to recreate that, then let the images be there and then try to drop the images and like keep the feeling and see if anything else comes up that I could add to my notes. I was just trying to really do it like basic. And whenever I would do love or humility or gratitude, and then I brought up the feeling of sadness, like I compared that situation, the sadness had to change. When I, like, for example, contentment was one of the ones I was doing, just being content, which is different for gratitude for me. So when I was like, I embody contentment, and then I bring in the image of this beautiful friend, and contentment for me was like Thomas, the image is like Thomas Kincaid house where it has a yellow glow from the outside. And it was just like everything's fine. I have empty shelves inside of me and full shelves. Like I don't need everything full. Like there's enough. It's all good. I don't have to have too much or I don't have to have too little. It's just enough. And the way it felt was that the pressure outside of my body was equal with the pressure inside. It was just kind of this equilibrium. So when I thought of that friendship, that sadness changed to like, isn't it beautiful that there was a time where we like reciprocal was kind of like that equilibrium. And then it changed and it's okay because she's going to be attracted to what she needs developmentally. We can still stay friends and be content with this certain level. It's going to be different, but in the loss of that is now created an open shelf, a space for me to find a new thing that fits where I'm at. So it went from like sadness to this understanding that we're developing at different rates in different ways and that we're still friends, but we can open up for new connections. And so that just embodying contentment, bringing in a lower vibration that I felt was pretty healthy because I wasn't running away from it, I was letting myself feel it. But then it just naturally morphed into this content. So I couldn't even say sad at the end of that moment. I was more like just a sober understanding of like how life works sometimes. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it just changed for me. And yet nothing else changed other than the way I was feeling the energy of this real life situation.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Yeah, I love the way you explain that. When we change on the inside, right, energetically with our thoughts, which create the vibration in our body, it does change what's happening for us. It changes our whole experience, not just our felt experience, which I think is what you're describing. It changes our felt experience, but that in turn changes our real life reality, like our physical experience.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah.
The only like I think the whole point of me saying that is what I forgot to say at the end is what I was wondering, what do I want to do about this? Do I need to address it with her? Do we just kind of like do our own thing and kind of both know it? And when you talked either, I think it was last week about aligning. So like we talk about the aligning coaching, but like, what do you do next when you feel these things? It left me with all these options that didn't feel like I was out of step or out of integrity. All of a sudden, instead of being like, maybe I have to address it with her and all these things that made me feel back into like, that feels yucky. It was like, I can love her and smile and wish her in my mind when I see her that she finds the next best reciprocal friendship that she needs and that I do too. And it just made me have like all these other options of actually what to do in my life, which will change how my life like what happens when we see each other, which changes everything. So I think that's what you were saying is like it comes from the inside, but then you have a domino effect and literally things change.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So what we want to do, people be like, so what are you saying? Just sit around and feel good all day? Don't take action, especially our action takers, right? And I get that. Like we want to feel productive. We want to feel like we have some control and we want to do something. But there's a big difference in having all that energy and that angst and that pressurized energy and trying to action line our way into a result or action line our way out of feeling what we really feel. And the alternative to that is what you're saying, like embody, feel, transmute that energy, get to know that energy, step in closer to it, let it move through us, right? Let ourselves get to a place that feels more in alignment. Then when we take action from that place of alignment, it's very, very different, even if it looks similar, right? Because it might look similar, but it's very, very different than had we tried to action line ourselves into the result or out of the feeling, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts about that? I'm going to share my screen once again and go back to that portion of the slide where it had the universal laws on it. And I kind of want to talk about some scenarios with this on the screen. And as we talk about it, I want you to really think about how the laws make sense to you. I'm going to tell you kind of a superficial situation. Actually didn't feel superficial at the time, that I very recently had. I had a fairly small infection in my body recently, and it came on pretty quick. Like I just started feeling crappy and I decided to go to the doctor. But you know how things are with COVID. I'm sure they're similar everywhere. And I had a long wait, and people are really, really distant, and it just made it take a long time. And when you have any kind of infection, I think, you know, like you just feel really and bad. And so I thought, this is perfect. I'm going to practice these laws. And so, you know, I've been there for like over an hour, and I'm finally in this room, and I'm still waiting for a doctor to come see me. And I just started thinking about relativity first, right? Like I have some choices going on. I feel this crudiness. I feel this like desire to just not be there. Like I really just wanted to go home and lay down. I feel this desire to just physically, like not just emotionally, but physically be able to check out and not have to be like seen by people. And then I started thinking about it, right? I started thinking about who's seeking medical care today? Who's giving medical care today, right? And so my brain started going, like I could have this infection that was relatively benign. Even when I went in there, I was pretty sure I knew what I needed and the treatment. I could have this, or it could be something different, right? And then I started thinking about my husband at home, who physically felt great, but he was dealing with some other things emotionally, right? And so I started to think about my circumstances. This just is what it is right now for me. It could look like what my husband's look like. It could look like what somebody who's over in the hospital looks like. It could look like this physician, who, by the way, was the only one I saw trying to treat all these people who were coming into this after hours clinic. Like it could look like what she looks like. We all have our thing. And I just thought for a moment, I'm just going to settle into my thing, right? And so that's how I was able to use the law of relativity in the moment. I didn't push away that I felt crappy. I didn't try to think myself, well, at least it's not that bad, right? It just, this is what I'm dealing with, right? And I just practiced taking different vantage points. When I was able to do that, my energy changed. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this sucks and healthcare sucks and COVID sucks and all the things, I'm so mad, right? It wasn't that at all. It was just like, this is uncomfortable and this is how I feel. And I was able to really change that energy into gratitude. And you guys, I'm not always able to do this. And if you're not able to do this, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, and I'm not trying to say everybody should be able to do this all the time. There will still be times in my life that I can't do this. But in this moment, I was able to get myself to the point where I was just like, thank you. Thank you, Heavenly Father, that I live in a world with urgent cares. Thank you that I got here and decided to come before this one was closed. And I Googled when my pharmacy would close. Thank you that this pharmacy stays open late enough for me to go get this medication. Thank you that this physician that I'm seeing is here and chose this profession and chose to be here and taking time away from whatever their life is. Like I genuinely was able to get to that gratitude eventually. And then what happens, right? Then let's take it into the vibration. So I'm feeling differently in my body. And when she comes in and she's like, oh my gosh, you've been here for a long time. I have kept you waiting. And instead of saying, yes, you have, and this sucks, I was like, yeah, we're all here, right? Like it was just kind of, it is what it is. And she was so kind and so nice. By the way, she might not always be nice, right? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go the next time, but she was so kind and she was so nice. And I was able to be so grateful to her. And she took her time with me, and I was able to express some things to her and some concerns to her, right? I was in a vibration that I wanted to be in. And when she came in, I was able to connect with her, not because of what she was doing, but because of how I was feeling. And when I feel that way, right, I get to draw in the things that are good for me. I'm not resisting. I'm not blocking. Sometimes it's good for me to experience hard things. Sometimes it's good for me to experience a rude physician who doesn't want to be there, right? Because then I am like, oh, wow, I will take a note. I didn't like the way that felt. Maybe I don't want to have other people feel that way. I don't know what the reason might be. I'm making all of this up now, right? I don't want you to fall into the trap, though. If I am in this good frequency that everything will be perfect, like the rabbits were, sometimes it will be, but sometimes it won't be. And sometimes what we don't choose can be good for us too. It's all part of the law of relativity, transmutation, acceptance, being in that vibration that we choose. And like we've talked about from the comments today already, when we're in the vibration that we choose, when we are in alignment with the person we want to be in the world, that's when things work together for our good. And that's when we're much more apt to be able to accomplish the goals that we're trying to achieve. So take a look at each of these laws, and you don't have to share them, but I want you to think of how maybe you've been using them already, or perhaps a situation that you would like to use some of these tools with. Just going to leave this up for another moment.
Rhonda, can I ask a silly question?
No silly questions. You may ask.
Okay. Well, we brought up some real life things, your experience and my experience. Can you walk me through what this looks like with a goal, like a financial goal?
Yeah, sure. So these laws are always working, whether we think they are or not. And there's no particular order on them. So when I walk you through a financial goal, it might not be the way that the laws pop up in your mind and the way you would perceive it. Does that make sense? So I want everybody on the call to know that. Like when it pops up for you, it might sound different. It might look different. The order might be different. But and I see this with coaches all the time. So we have a coach who's coming in and they want to earn a certain amount of money. Let's say $100,000, just because that seems to be the gold standard of a new coach, right? And so at first, if they don't think they're capable of making that, and they probably don't, or they would have already done it and they don't need to be seeing me, right? But if they don't think they're capable of that, then they're going to have some pressure. They're going to have some resistance. They're going to have some compare and despair. Insert what makes sense to you, right? But that's the energy they're going to be feeling. Okay. So now we can get into transmutation. That's when we go into that subconscious. Why do you not believe this is possible for you? What do you think about yourself? What have other people taught you about yourself? What do you think about your profession? Like this could come up in a lot of different ways, depending on who you are and what your financial goal is and why you have it. But when we figure those things out and we accept what it is, right? Whatever it is, and we learn about those things, that's where we're able to stop judging ourselves and stop pressurizing ourselves. And we literally let that energy start to move through us. We let it start to wiggle through, and that's where it becomes transmutable, right? Then when we start thinking about emotion on purpose, it's the same energy in our body, but that's where we're starting to create the joy, the love, the gratitude. And Bonnie kind of talked about this today with her goal already, right? Just when she stopped pressurizing herself and she's like, oh, this is easy, she was able to transmute the energy in her body and then bring her goal into it after she was working with the energy first, right? So she's working from the inside out. When we start thinking about the law of relativity, which by the way, you could do this at the beginning, it can come in any order, but we start saying, well, do all coaches make $100,000? Do I even want to make $100,000? How much am I making? Is my goal money? Maybe it's something else, right? Like we only want to make $100,000 because somebody at some school said, if you make this much money, then it proves that you've hustled your way to this and now you can do it a different way, right? Like it's all relative. And so when we can start understanding what our thoughts are and why we're comparing and why we have that money goal, right? We start looking at it very differently. It just is what it is. The amount of money in our bank account for all of us right now, it just is. And if we compared it to people in third world countries, or we compared it to a group of Hollywood actors, like we're going to feel very different about it, right? We might be embarrassed in a third world country because we have too much. And we might be embarrassed in a group of Hollywood actors because we have too little. And we might compare it to everybody who lives on our street and feel pretty normal. Right? See how relativity also plays off of the transmutation. When we can get that relativity in line, it transmutes energy naturally. Does that make sense? All of these laws play off of each other. And when we start to transmute the energy, the vibration changes. We'll move on down to vibration and attraction. When the vibration changes, that's where we're aligning with our goal, or we're aligning with something we don't want, right? Like if we stay in a vibration with the things that we hate, which many people do, myself included, I've done this a lot in my life, focus on the things that I hate, which makes me feel terrible, which makes me feel sad, depressed, all the things, right? Then I fuse myself with the things that I hate. Now, please don't misconstrue this to mean avoid the things that you hate so you don't fuse yourself to it. No, that's where we address it and we learn where's that coming from in our conditioning, right? Let's move in and we can even love those feelings that don't feel so good in our body. And once we get to know them and we view them from lots of different vantage points, it starts to transmute. And then we get to choose what we align to with our frequency, right? The attraction part comes in with you are literally attracting whatever you're synced to with your frequency or your vibration. So do you see how it's all intermingled? Like we cannot take one of these laws out and say that they're separate from the other. It is all intermingled. Thank you for asking that question. We have just a couple minutes. I'm going to stop this screen share, but does anybody else have a thought or idea before we close? I wanted to share something that I think is valuable. Since we did the homework of creating emotion on purpose, I want you to know why we're doing that. I want to just do a quick review from the first week. We talked about when we're really young, like between the ages of 0 to 3, our subconscious is wide open. We're learning, accepting things in our subconscious without a thought. Like it's just coming to us. And then 3 to like 7, 8, 9, a little bit older, right? We're still pretty suggestible, but it's not quite the same. And then as we get older and older, we mostly develop our conditioning and programming through repetition and highly emotional situations. Our subconscious is pretty closed right now, but we still develop thoughts and beliefs about ourselves through repetition and highly emotional situations. That's where trauma comes into play as well, right? That highly emotional situation, and it gets stuck inside our body, our mind and our body, right? Do you see how we're doing the reverse? We are using repetition and highly emotional situations on purpose that we choose. When we were young, it happened without our awareness. It happened without our permission. It happened without the people who were giving us all this crap. They probably didn't even know it for the most part. They weren't like, hey, let me pass along my kids this, this, and this. They were doing it without knowing, and we were accepting it without knowing. The difference is now you get to choose on purpose what you'd like to repeat and with what emotion you'd like to accept it. So we're creating on purpose. Last thing, 1 minute. Some of you might have a harder time than others visualizing and feeling. And I have found that to be true, and there's nothing wrong with you. It just means your brain works differently, and that's okay. It's beautiful. I want to give you some ideas. If you're a writer, I want you to practice writing your goal in very specific detail. The smells, the tastes, the touches, right? Write it in so much detail that it takes you there. If you can't see it, write it. Sometimes I just speak it to myself. I literally will turn on my Zoom camera or go look in a mirror or look in my phone camera and just say it out loud to myself while I'm looking at my emotion and my facial expression. I am so happy and grateful I have this relationship with my husband. I am so happy and grateful I get to do this work in the world, right? I will look at myself and visually speak it. Sometimes I record myself speaking it and I play it at night when I'm about to go to bed. Like I just hear myself saying it over and over and over. Some people love vision boards. I don't do as many of those, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like if you can't see it in your own mind visually very well, do a vision board. Go to Pinterest, go to Google, take screenshots with your phone and place it all together so you can see it. These are all different ways of repetition with emotional acceptance. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It helps you keep your focus as well. I don't care how you do it. Practice. This is your homework this week. Practice some of these ideas and see what works for you. And I would love for you to come back next week and tell us if you found some new ways, some things that work better for you. Tell us if it didn't work. Tell us what thoughts and new ideas that you have. because it's going to help the whole group as we share. And thank you for all of you who shared. And if you didn't share, thank you for showing up and the emotional support. I forgot to send out the reminder invitation. Those of you who catch the replay, thank you for watching it. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week for our final session of Goal Getters. So powerful. Yes, it is. Thank you all for being here. Bye, friends.